I'm a pimp with this 40 Rockstar Isaac, please don't stop me. I drink drive, swerving in the mud.
What is going on, you guys? How are you all doing today? Hope you guys are doing fantastic as always. In today's video, we are going to be going over a BMW N54, N55, B58 pre-tuning checklist. And what I mean by this is basically a simple check-off method of things that you pretty much need to do prior to tuning your BMW turbocharged engines. First couple things that we're going to be talking about have to do with these cars' ignition systems. Now, when it comes to any sort of tuning on your BMW turbocharged engine, whether it is the N54, the N55, B58, even the N24 cylinder engines, it is very, very important to make sure that you are running fresh spark plugs and fresh coil packs in the car. With a lot of BMW motors, specifically the N54 and the N55, BMW recommends you change your spark plugs every 30 to 40,000 miles or so is the recommended service interval, I believe. However, when you are tuned, obviously you are advancing ignition timing, you are increasing boost and a number of other parameters that are going to be ultimately adding more stress onto the car. So if your ignition coils or your spark plugs, if they are starting to wear out over time, which is natural for any component in a car, especially a sports car, then it is definitely time to get those replaced. Otherwise, you will be running into misfiring issues, and that can lead to a lot of problems with just your car running really rough. It can lead you to basically not being able to go wide open throttle in the car, and really you're not going to be able to enjoy any sort of tune, and you're going to be doing more harm than good to your car. So it is really important. If you guys actually remember, when I owned my N54 335i, I did not change out my spark plugs or coil packs prior to tuning the car. And this in turn led to a lot of misfiring issues. And in fact, it was so bad that I completely fried one of the coil packs on the car. And that was just a pain in the ass to deal with. The car was running on 5 cylinders for a couple of days, and I wasn't really able to drive it because, well, it was misfiring. So honestly, you know, play it safe, get new spark plugs, get new coil packs. You know, if you don't change them, chances are you will be fine. But just as a preemptive, you know, sort of preventative safety measure, it's probably best to do it. It's a very simple process to change out your coil packs and your spark plugs. And on top of that, it's going to just help your car overall. It's certainly not going to do any harm and can only help the car run better. So those are the first 2 things that I would check off the list. Third thing that I would do, if your car is over the 30,000 mile mark, chances are it probably is. If you have 60, 90, 110, 120,000 miles on the car, make sure to get a intake valve walnut blast. And what this is essentially these cars, especially the inline 6s, have direct injection, meaning during the combustion process, there is a lot of carbon buildup and carbon deposit that basically gets suited and covered up in the intake valves of the car. Your intake valves and the ports inside them tend to get clogged up, and they tend to get covered in a just layer of fine charred black dirt as a result of fuel and just the sort of combustion/ignition process of the engine. Now, in turn, this can lead to reduced gas mileage, reduced power output, misfiring, and just a number of other maintenance issues on the car, especially with the engine. And it's certainly not going to help the car if you tune the car and start adding more power to it. So definitely, it's in your best interest to clean out the intake valves. What a lot of people do is they use fine walnut shell shavings, and they basically take off the intake manifold, they spray down the intake ports with a walnut blast, and from there it cleans it. It does a really, really good job. My buddy Jake Spence, I actually referenced him in my last video, but he actually did a great, awesome video covering the walnut blast on the BMW N54. The process is very similar on the N55 as well. And as I sort of stated with the ignition coils and the spark plugs, doing the intake valve walnut blast certainly cannot harm your car. It can only do good. It will only help the car run better, run smoother. So by doing those three things off the bat, you are really putting yourself in a good position to tune the car and to add a good amount of power, in addition to just overall helping the car maintain itself and just be good. The fourth thing that I would do, and especially on N55 motors, if you have not done this already, is a charge pipe upgrade. Now, these cars, the charge pipes are very, very weak, especially on the N55s. The N54s, they're a little bit stronger. The charge pipe is basically the last point of entry of air before it enters into the car's throttle body and then enters the engine. So this is where a lot of hot incoming charge air is coming through the intake tubing, and the charge pipe is made of plastic. Lo and behold, BMW decided to produce all the charge pipes with plastic, I assume for cost and manufacturing reasons, but that's a problem for us, especially for us guys that are enthusiasts and like to drive our cars hard and want to tune them. It leads into issues. After a lot of heat cycling, after a lot of high boost pressures, the plastic tends to warp, it tends to degrade, it gets softer, it gets brittle, and in turn that leads to cracking or an entire explosion of the charge pipe itself, where it literally gets blown into pieces, and that will result in a massive boost leak and the car being thrown into limp mode. Now, obviously, you want to try to avoid that scenario. It's not a huge deal if it happens, because it has happened to so many people. Your car is going to be okay if it happens, but you want to prevent that. Nobody likes to see limp mode or a check engine light. So replace the charge pipe with an aluminum one. There's a ton of companies that make really good aftermarket solutions. Berger Motorsports would be my first pick. There's also VRSF, Evolution Raceworks, all kinds of companies that have provided these solutions for a charge pipe. So with that, you are basically guaranteeing that under, higher excessive boost pressures with an off-the-shelf or custom flash, you're not going to be running into any sort of boost leak or major charge pipe, limp mode home engine issues with the car. And the last and final thing that I would have to highly recommend, and this specifically pertains to the N54 engines, is injectors. If you notice that your car is misfiring, if it is having a rough idle, if you're getting certain error codes and stuff when you pull, then it would be highly beneficial to replace your injectors. With the N54, it is very common to have injector issues, injector failure, especially with leaky injector issues, and this is very common. A very easy way to tell if your injector is leaking is to pull your spark plugs and to see if you can smell like a raw, rich fuel smell. If you smell gasoline, that is a very good sign that your car is running into issues with the injectors. If you're misfiring and you change out your spark plugs, your coil pack, then that is also, and you're still misfiring, then that is also a telltale sign that chances are you got an issue with your injectors. BMW had many different revisions of the N54 injector design, but basically the benchmark for the N54 is the Index 12 set of injectors. Now, they are a bit expensive. I think like a full set will cost you a little over $1,000, but it is highly worth it because that is one of the leading things that will help ensure that your car is running smooth throughout the tuning process, throughout the flashing process, no matter what you do. Your car's idle, and all sorts of other parameters that are working in combination with the fuel system are going to be working in proper form. So getting your injectors replaced is not a requirement when you're tuning your car. It is definitely not a requirement. A lot of times, even Index 8 or Index whatever injectors are going to be fine, but it is something that is highly beneficial, and especially if you plan on continuing with the modding process of the car, adding upgraded turbos, E85, things of that nature, you definitely want to have a good set of properly revised injectors, specifically the Index 12s, running in your N54. In conclusion, that about sums it up for these cars, for the pre-tuning checklist, so to speak. Like I said, just a quick overcap. Spark plugs, ignition coils, two of the easiest, most basic, cost-effective things that you can do just to help that your car is going to ensure that it's going to be running properly and no issues when you're tuning it. The next thing to do, intake walnut blast. It's going to help with your gas mileage, it's going to help with power delivery, it's going to help prevent misfiring. Very, very most beneficial thing to do to your car. BMW recommends to get this done every 30 to 40,000 miles as well. So if you're planning on doing your spark plugs and coil packs, talk to a local shop and see if you can get a walnut blast done. The fourth thing, get your charge pipe replaced, especially if you have an N55. As I stated before, they are very, very prone to blowing even under stock boost pressures. So it's definitely in your best interest to change out the charge pipe. It's going to help quite a bit to prevent any sort of boost leak issues and engine limp home mode issues. And the fifth and final thing, like I said, this pertains mainly to the N54 guys, is injector replacement. So go with the Index 12s, you know, fork out the cash. Yes, it's gonna hurt a little bit in the beginning, but it's honestly worth it for the overall longevity and just good durability of your car. If you can get all 5 of those things done, you will be in great shape for running a tuned BMW turbocharged engine. Like I said, you know, you don't have to do every single one of these things. Chances are you'll probably still be fine with running a tune, even if you didn't do anything. But just to play it safe, those are the 5 things that I would highly recommend you get done on your car to make sure that it's good to go. In addition to things like maintenance, oil changes, just the usual stuff. I can't wait till I tune this thing. It's already so fast as it is, in my opinion. I love it. With all that being said, you guys, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give me a thumbs up, as well as subscribe to my YouTube channel, Simply Car Things, for all sorts of awesome automotive content.